am here. I apologize. I was not able to attend the webinar previously, but I'm here with Laurie. Laurie will be doing the bulk heavy lifting. I'm here to provide support and answer some questions.
Very good. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you, Dr. G.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity.
I would just like to, for Laurie, I'd like to just ask you, as we discussed, to keep the presentation to 20 minutes. And at the, there are some which address the questions that many of the attendees of the first webinar had. So I want to make sure that we get to them. If you find yourself running out of time, then we will ask you to return to those during the Q&A session, because they were specific questions that we'd like you to get to at some point.
Sure, there's a lot of slides, but I'm not going to touch on every single point on every slide, so it'll be for their reference if you make these slides available.
And to the presenters, the few of you who sent your slides that were not on the Global Genes template, put them all on the Global Genes template by request. So you might notice some very slight format changes. There are no other changes that we made, but don't be startled or alarmed if you see that that all the slides are now on Global Genes format.
Great, no problem. Thank you, Shira.
Okay, very good. So we should be getting ready to start in just a few moments.
Not that I know of.
I'll start. Okay. Right. So it's just about 2 o'clock, and we're just going to give folks another couple of minutes to sign on. So we'll be starting momentarily. Everyone to part 2 of our webcast series entitled Understanding Rare Disease Registries. This is Shira Kramer, and I'm an epidemiologist and president of Global Epi Research, which is an epidemiological research and consulting firm located in Maryland that has a particular focus on rare diseases and patient registries. This webinar series is to provide practical guidance and resources to patient groups and other organizations that are interested in developing patient registries or natural history studies. There's quite a bit of confusion about terminology and basic organizational requirements, resources, and expertise required in order to design a robust registry. Hopefully, the series will be helpful in providing direction and tools to support your goals. To start Part 1 of this series, which was held on July 31st, included presentations by me about key considerations in planning and building a patient registry, by Dr. Stephen Gross, who spoke about patient registry resources offered by the Office of Rare Diseases Research at the NIH, by Dr. Marshall Summer, who does documenting the natural history of a disease through patient registries, and Mrs. O'Boyle, who shared lessons learned in building the Phelan-McDermott Syndrome International Registry. The slides presented in Part 1 are available on the Global Genes website. And during this webcast, we invited participants to submit topics of interest and questions to be addressed during this second webcast, and we've designed the content of this webcast in response to your questions. It's scheduled to last 90 minutes, including time for questions at the end. You can submit questions to the panelists at any time during the webcast, and we'll have questions until the end of all of the speakers' presentations. To submit a question, go to the right-hand panel, click on the Q&A box, and type in your question. On the menu, send your question to Katie Mastro, who will forward the questions to me and direct them to the panelists. In this webcast, we've asked representatives of some of the major registry platform providers to give a brief overview of their platform. Since limited, we realize that there's quite a bit of additional information that would be of value to you in evaluating these platforms. We've asked each of the platform providers to complete a detailed registry comparison tool, which will be posted on the Global Genes website after this webcast. With Part 1 of this registry series, video of the webcast and the slides presented today will be posted on the Global Genes website. Today's webcast programming is a reflection of the questions and interests expressed by the participants of Part 1 in this series. Many questions on IRBs, informed consent, and data privacy. So we're devoting the first portion of this webcast to that topic. Speakers will be Dr. Felix G. and Lori Carlisle of the Chesapeake IRB. Another component of registry planning is the choice of a registry database or platform. So we've invited some of the leading rare disease registry platform providers to bring an overview of their platforms. Liz will discuss the Sanford Research Coordination of Rare Diseases at Sanford, or CORDS Registry. Nicole Miller will present the PatientCrossroads Connect program. Robert Wilson will review the Medical Science Peer Open overview of the Patients Like Me platform. I'll wrap up with a discussion of some additional resources that are of value in designing a registry or registry content, as well as issues to consider and to maximize the value of your registry. But let me introduce our first speakers, Dr. Felix G. and Lori Carlisle from the Chesapeake IRB. Lori?
Hi, thank you for inviting us this afternoon. I'm Lori Carlisle. I'm from an independent IRB, that's Chesapeake IRB, and we work a lot with rare disease patient registries, so we are very familiar with it. Dr. Felix G., he's the CEO of Chesapeake IRB, which was established back in 1993, so we've been around a long time. We're very excited to be able to present today. Next. I'll talk a bit today about some of the guiding principles that have led to our federal regulations as we know them today. I'll talk a little bit about the mission and the responsibilities of an IRB, as well as answer some questions from, I believe, from the last webinar that you had that came up, and hopefully we can touch on those points. And there are a lot of slides here, so if I don't get to everyone, I tried to cover all of the information. So certainly, since these will be posted, folks can go ahead back in and take a look at the information on the slides if we don't have time to go through all of them. Next. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the documents that, or a lot of events that have led up to several documents that outline the ethical principles in the conduct of research with human subjects. And these documents have really shaped, especially the Belmont principles, really shaped the federal regulations as we know them today. Next. One is the Nuremberg Code. As most of you may know, the Nuremberg Code came out of the Nuremberg trial, where a number of Nazi physicians who were conducting research concentration camp prisoners were up for obviously the atrocities that they did. Some examples were conducting experimentation on twins, where they injected substances into eyes to see if they would change color. They looked at how to treat hypothermia in some of the prisoners. They submerged them in tanks of ice water for 3 hours, or sent them out into freezing temperatures without any clothes to see how they could essentially rewarm those individuals. But I can imagine that was not voluntary. So the Nuremberg Code is really our first, human subject protection or research ethics, and it was a set of 10 standards. One of the most important standards would be voluntary informed consent that actually came out of the Nuremberg Code. Next. The document that we have is the Declaration of Helsinki. The Declaration was initially adopted by the World Medical Association in 1964. However, it's been modified many times and as recent as this past month. Initially, it was a set of 18 principles. I believe it's up to 37 now. But it really was developed as a set of principles for guiding physicians who were involved in medical research with human subjects. So as you can imagine, physicians not only worked with patients, but then they also were conducting research. They really had, this Declaration of Helsinki really had to differentiate between what is research and what is treatment. One of the main things that came out of the Declaration of Helsinki in 1964 was the first mention of independent ethics review committee. Finally, in 1979, we got the Belmont Report, and there are a number of atrocities that led up to this particular document, which I won't go into detail. But essentially, it's a set of 3 basic principles. These 3 basic principles really did provide the foundation for the United States Code of Federal Regulations, both for FDA as well as the Department of Health and Human Services. The first ethical principle is respect for person, and the way that is applied is through what we call the informed consent process. So not the document, but the entire process of informed consent. The second ethical principle is known as beneficence, and something that an IRB has to do is look at a study, look at a research study, and evaluate what the risks are in comparison to the benefits and weigh them against each other. So does it actually make sense to conduct this research, if the risk-benefit ratio is appropriate? And the third principle is justice. And the way that's applied is to subject selection or equitable subject selection. So you want to place the burden of research on one particular population who may not, in fact, reap the rewards of that research. So these are 3 things that an IRB actually has to look at each time they review a research study, whether it's minimal risk or more minimal risk research. Next. A number of different IRBs, and I probably should have said this in the beginning, but I'm sure most of you know it stands for Institutional Review Boards. The day when the regulations were initially promulgated back in 1981, most IRBs or institutional review boards were affiliated with an institution. So we have a number of different types of IRBs. We have academic medical centers, hospitals, government agencies, advocacy groups, and they also have independent IRBs, and that's what Chesapeake IRB is. And we're independent because we are not affiliated with an institution. There are of different sets of regulations that actually govern IRB activities, and it really depends on jurisdiction. So 40 CFR 46 is the Department of Health and Human Services regulations. DHS actually has jurisdiction over funding. So 45 CFR 46 applies when individuals or organizations are receiving grants, federal money. On the other hand, FDA, their jurisdiction is over products. So 21 CFR 50 and 56 are the FDA regulations, and for things like, drugs, devices, biologics, cosmetics. So when we have a study such as that, we would have to apply the FDA regulations. And then we also have 21 CFR Part 11, which is for electronic, essentially data capture, storage, and transmission. As we're all familiar with, every time you go to the doctors, it seems like you're having to fill out the form again, and that's really for confidentiality issues, the protection of that. Regulations, we must have I guess you can keep clicking. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the scope definitions, membership requirements of an IRB, as well as some of the documentation and responsibilities of an institutional review board. So the mission of the IRB is to review research, hopefully approve it, and conduct periodic review of biomedical research involving human subjects. And this is under FDA. So the primary purpose of such review is to assure the protection of rights and welfare of human subjects. And that's really the key phrase there, is to assure the protection of the rights and welfare of human subjects. So we're really to do what we call an ethical review. And each and every time we look at anything that is submitted to us, that is our primary purpose, is to review it from an ethical perspective, not necessarily from a scientific perspective, and we'll get to that in just a few minutes. IRB shall also conduct continuing review of research covered by the regulations at intervals appropriate to the degree of risk, but not less than once per year. So this essentially says is that we have to conduct what we call continuing review. And that continuing review has to occur depending on the degree of risk, but not less than once per year. So for more risky studies, maybe it's a new drug that's being used in a pediatric population, or maybe it's a drug that hasn't been used, it's approved, but hasn't been used in a pediatric population. In those cases, you may require to re-review the study on a more frequent basis, this annual, but maybe every 6 months or every 3 months. Next. As for IRB membership, the regulations require that we have a minimum of at least 5 members. That doesn't mean we can't have more, but the regulations require at least 5. Those members have to have a diversity in membership, and we'll have to include at least one non-scientist member and 1 member not associated with the institution. Now, as you imagine, with universities, with hospitals, a lot of those members come, the IRB members come from within the institution. They actually have to go out and get what they call a community member, so someone that's not actually affiliated with the institution. In our case, none of our members are actually affiliated with us. They're all actually, they have their own positions outside of Chesapeake as physicians, consultants, some work at FDA, OHRP, et cetera. So back to when the regulations initially came out, that bullet point actually made a lot more sense. Next. Membership they have to be at least 5 with varying backgrounds, and they have to be qualified through their experience and expertise to be able to actually review the research. So when we research in, we have approximately 30 members, and each of those members have a certain expertise. When a study comes in that requires their expertise, their knowledge, their interests, studies actually get assigned to those individual members. Next. Some actions that IRBs can take per the regulations are obviously we can approve research to move forward. We can require modifications in the research to secure approval, or disapprove research if some of there are regulations that have to be met from an IRB perspective to review research. If they aren't met or the criteria aren't met, we disapprove research. So when a protocol or a research study, human subjects research study, is initially submitted to Chesapeake, or IRB, I'm sorry. We are looking at things, obviously the protocol, and again, we're looking at it from an ethical perspective, but we'll also look at the science to make sure that it makes sense. Can it actually achieve the research objectives? Not really to say, is this the best science? Is this what we would do? We know that it makes sense, can achieve the objectives, and minimize risks. Obviously, we look at the procedures and the safeguards around those procedures. And again, if you recall, I was talking about the Belmont principles. We do what's called a risk-benefit analysis. And obviously, if the risks of research outweigh the benefits, that's not something that we could approve. Next. Obviously, we have to review the informed consent documents, and I know there were a lot of questions around informed consent on the documents. And again, continuing review, we have to do on a periodic basis. I have a few minutes left, so I'm going to kind of click through some slides. Any research involving human subjects should go through the IRB review process. Again, drugs, devices, registries, there's biologics, et cetera. They should be reviewed by an IRB to make sure that it's okay to move forward. Next. I know there were some questions also about exempt research. There are a number of criteria in the regulations. I think it's, I don't know, 8 criteria. If those criteria are met, the research can be exempt from IRB oversight. That doesn't mean that it's not human subjects research. In fact, it is, but it's no longer required to be under the oversight of an IRB. And I'll go through each of those criteria so you can skip through. And you can probably skip through this. Again, this is a process. It's not just a document. I know everyone here, you have to have information in a document, but it is an ongoing process. There are ways to actually waive consent. You can waive elements of consent. You can waive documentation of consent. Certainly for something like registries, we're probably waiving things like documentation of consent, so no one has to actually sign it, sign a consent form. You can go ahead and go through probably to slide 36, because I think we have 2 minutes. And these next couple of slides are just the basic elements of consent if anyone wanted to read through them. That's something we have to review to make sure they are in the informed consent document. Go ahead. Go ahead. And waivers that I was referring to. You can go ahead. Next. Slide 36 is where the questions, there we go. So these are a few of the questions. I think I touched on a number of them as we were talking for minutes, and then these were the ones that we didn't touch in the presentation, and so we would just kind of address here. So I guess there was a question on steps of IRB submission, initial review, and ongoing review, including cost and amount of time required. So steps of IRB submission, we have a complete electronic platform. So we have something, they're called smart forms, so it's not really a submission, kind of a 10-page document. They're smart forms, you click it, you click on radial buttons, drop downs, upload protocols, consent form, anything else that's applicable to the research. And at that time, we look at it from a staff perspective, administrative perspective, and when it's initial review. When it goes to initial review, the IRB obviously makes a determination whether it can be approved or not, can it move forward, and then we also take a look to see when should we see it back. If it is approved, we need to see it back in a year, we need to see it back in 6 months. Costs, I mean, that really depends on the type of study that it is. Exempt studies sometimes can cost a little less. You know, it can range anywhere, I guess, depending on the IRB, from $1,000 to $1,500 for initial review. I know institutional IRBs also do, so I don't have, exact costs from an average, I guess, perspective. And the amount of time required for a review from usually an independent IRB is about 5 days. Institutional IRBs are a little bit longer because they have a lot of other responsibilities outside the IRB itself. Those timelines can reach anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 months to 8 months. I do believe that they are starting to improve as well. Is it acceptable to an IRB for a patient group to offer incentives to patients for signing up for a registry? What what is considered acceptable and what are the circumstances when it's not. So absolutely, it's acceptable to offer incentives. There's reimbursement in studies, there are inducements. Something like this may be more of an inducement, as long as it's not, overly placing undue influence on someone and giving them so much that they feel that they have to participate in order just to get the money. Something like a drawing for a prize, a free meeting registration is absolutely appropriate. And, sometimes depending on, the more risky studies, drug studies, if there are a lot of visits, obviously something like that you may be compensated more because it's a bigger burden for the subjects, for what's getting there, having to find childcare, having to show up at visits, twice a week. So for these types of studies, however, this is absolutely appropriate. Next. It's to an IRB for a patient registry to charge fees to researchers for access to the registry. I also, and Felix may want to chime in on this, but I do feel that is acceptable as long as there's permission from the patients for investigators or research to access data. That should have been something that is in the informed consent form. Also, you're charging them because you are having to maintain the database, having to actually, get the participants to enter their information into the database. So I think it's something that offsets the time and effort on your end, and it would absolutely be appropriate. And again, that would be important to have in the consent form so these individuals know that other researchers may be accessing their data. Next, that may be it. How should registries handle informed consent for minors that reach adult age? Best practice is always to re-consent those individuals to make sure they want to continue to participate. And then what happens to data if they can't be reached for re-consent, but prior parent guardian consent was provided? In cases, they may have gone through what's called assent, and there may be information in both the consent and assent as to whether or not, or he can call to ask questions, or maybe they want their data removed. At that point, I don't think that there's really anything, if they can't be reached, that you can do, but I still think that you can use that data. Practices recommendation for a successful submission is to call your IRB, find out what they want, what do they expect to be in a protocol. Remember, protocol is a recipe of how you're going to conduct the research or the information you're going to collect. Talk with them, figure out if you need informed consent, and communication is the best method. I think that's it.
I think that's it. Thank you so much for a very informative presentation. So next, thank you. Let's see. Back to. There we go. And, great. Next, I'd like to introduce Liz Donahue from Stanford Research, who will discuss the coordination of rare diseases at Stanford or Core Registry platform.
Great, Shira. Thank you so much for the introduction. Can you hear me okay?
You're fine.
Great. I'm dialing in from Italy, so I just wanted to make sure everyone can hear me okay. The invitation to join you here today. This is really a great opportunity to discuss patient registries, provide information on platforms available, and I think the discussion and presentation from Lori on the IRB was absolutely essential and extremely helpful. So very happy to be here. I'm going to just mention next slide whenever the next one is up. So I think the first slide should be up just with my introduction, my name, and you can go to the next slide where I'll mention an overview of what I'll be talking about. First, I'll just give an introduction to CORDS and the Stanford Research, our mission and goals, our unique collaborations with the patient advocacy group START Registries, participant enrollment, our registry operations, data collection, management, dissemination, and finally some future directions and next steps for our registry. So first off, next slide is an introduction. CORDS is an international rare disease registry based at the Stanford Children's Health Research Center at Stanford Research. We're in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. The registry was established by Dr. David Pierce, who actually is the director of the Sanford Children's Health Research Center and the vice president of Sanford Research. He started the registry he actually studied a rare disease called Batten disease, and is well known in the Batten disease community for his research efforts. Dr. Pierce understood the value of a patient registry for Batten disease and recognized the need in many other rare disease communities. He also had a vision for having a central registry for all rare diseases so research can conduct a comparative analysis across diseases. So CORDS is an international rare disease registry. Anyone of any age may enroll. If they have a rare disease or if they are undiagnosed, they also may enroll. Next slide. Here's just a brief snapshot of our team. I wanted to let you know we have 3 full-time employees and Dr. Pierce, who are the principal investigator. CORDS is a research study that's actually approved by the Sanford Health IRB. We also have a scientific advisory board that reviews applications from researchers who want to access the registry. Of course, the IRB that's mentioned that does our study approval and our study renewal and continuing review each year. We have Research Information Technologies, the RIT group, which does a lot of our work with our web-based portal. We design our registry on the web-based portal to make it available to collect data. We also have an IT department and a digital strategies department that all provide services to our registry and make this project possible. Next slide just mentions the ERDRC group. It's the National Rare Disease Research Consortium. We are, as Sanford Research, is a member of the ERDRC, and Dr. David Pierce is in the executive committee. And I've had the pleasure of being on the Patient Registries and Natural Histories Working Group committee and learning from other registries that are out there, as well as trying to decide and shape how we will be moving forward with international rare disease registries. Next slide. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about our mission and goal. Then obviously to accelerate research into all rare diseases, and the specific goals are to create a resource of contact and clinical data on individuals diagnosed with any rare disease so that we can compare analysis across diseases, and also provide a mechanism by which researchers may identify and contact patients interested in participating in research. So we are all really familiar with the challenges with rare diseases, just with the numbers and trying to identify people that would be interested in participating in research. So registry does serve that function. Next, the CORDS registry is really a resource that we established to help some key stakeholders, researchers and healthcare providers, so that they can access important data. Most importantly, the patients and families, that they may learn about research studies and clinical trials for which they're eligible. And of course, the patient advocacy groups, which I always say are the ones that connecting the researchers and the patients, the ones really making things happen. And so I listed a couple of our partners there, which is not representative of all of our partners, but just is representative of the fact that we have adults that enroll in the registry, as well as children in a variety of different diseases. And then also that there are some crossover between the different disease registries with the AT Children's Project and the National Ataxia Foundation. We have a great list of our partners on our website, and we're very fortunate to have those patient advocacy groups. So the next slide, I'll touch on the patient advocacy groups, their role with our partnership. So whether the organizations have a registry or do not have a registry, they can partner with CORDS to start one and establish one. We're as flexible as we can be to accommodate the needs of patient advocacy group. We offer options for a general questionnaire, which uses the common data elements recommended by the Office of Rare Disease Research. We also offer options for a customized disease questionnaire. So the group may have additional data elements that they'd like to collect. We can add those onto the questionnaire. We also provide access to data to the patient groups for non-research purposes if they'd like that. Also, we offer to involvement in the review process. So for when researchers are applying for access to the registry, we involve the patient groups in that review process if they'd like. We also provide registry data reports for the patient groups as needed, or whenever they might want them on a regular basis, whatever their needs are. And then we also offer to move the registry if the need does happen to arrive. We really are focused on housing the data and building registries for these groups that really need them, because we really do have this vision for accelerating research into all rare diseases and the benefit of a central registry. There's to the organization to partner, to the participant to enroll, or the researchers to access the data. We are the patient advocacy groups do not need an IRB since we are approved by the Stanford Health IRB. We also have, as I mentioned, a research IT group collect and manage the data. Next slide, please. So, as I was mentioning, CORDS does have the information of general or disease-specific registries. Here you can see how you have registries on the left and on the right, disease-specific registries with additional specific data elements, disease-specific data elements, excuse me. But you can see how researchers will be able to do a comparative analysis across the common data elements, but as well as the disease-specific elements. It will be a little bit more difficult, but we'll be able to at least categorize them. We want to be flexible to allow patient groups to collect this information, because it can be extremely valuable to their research community and their patient community. Next slide, please. So in the data collection, I wanted just to mention we do use the CDEs recommended by the ORDR. There's just a list of the categories there, and then finally, at the end of that slide, you'll see that we do collect the information needed for the Global Unique Identifier, or the GUID, and can go into more detail, but I know I'm limited time, so I'll keep going. Next slide, and if there are questions, we can answer those later. Next slide is talking about our CORDS Registry for the National Ataxia Foundation, which was launched on July 8th. Of 2013. It's a disease-specific registry for those diagnosed with ataxia and also at risk for ataxia. That was a priority for the National Ataxia Foundation. We utilize the common data elements as well as the disease-specific data elements that their scientific advisory board had recommended and their medical advisory board had recommended. So we came up with a questionnaire and have had great success with the participants enrolling. The NAF has opted in for access to the data for non-research purposes, and they are also involved with the review process when researchers access data. Next slide, please. So here's a screenshot of the disease-specific questionnaire. I didn't put the whole questionnaire up there, but just wanted to give you an idea of how we use the common elements, but then you can see in the blue text there are some questions that the registry or the patient advocacy group would like to add. And also to see the co-branding on the questionnaire, which we always want to do to promote the registry, the patient group, and also to let the participants know that that's the registry that they have identified with. So next slide, please. The participant enrollment process, I just wanted to touch on briefly. We have an online platform which was established in April of 2012, and we also do in-person enrollment. We attend patient advocacy group meetings, their annual meetings, to speak and to help individuals enroll if they want to do that on site in person. We also have a clinical research associate that's present in our Stanford Children's Specialty Clinic that does to individuals that might be interested in enrolling. The screen form that's located on our website. Their diagnosis, their way that they'd like to enroll, so whether it's online or by mail. They want to enroll online or the forms by mail. So step 2, which is always important, is the actual enrollment process. The participants log in and use their username and password to complete their informed consent or questionnaire. We do have a tiered informed consent to allow individuals options to share their information in different ways and manage their preferences. Next slide, please. For participants, there's no cost to enroll. Participants are reminded annually to update their information. They may log in any time to update their information. If they have a doctor's visit and they want to update their information, they're very welcome to do that. And when a researcher wants to contact them about research, the CORDS personnel will do that on the researcher's behalf and let decide if they want to or not. participants are able to change the software. We use Yellow e-research software. It's a centralized relational database. It's a patient portal for online enrollment and easily searchable. We support multiple languages, and participants. Software also allows participants to upload forms such as test results. Those last two points are actually in progress, are high priority for us. But as far as the languages go, we would be very interested in working with patient groups if they'd be interested in establishing a registry. We'd be happy to work with them to translate or inform consent and documents to that. So next slide. Briefly, the researchers that apply for access, they have a brief process. They submit an application with a summary of the research, but mainly it's just to prove they have IRB approval. The application is reviewed by the CORD's Scientific Advisory Board, and the researchers, once they have approval, can log in to access the de-identified data, do a comparative analysis, identify individuals that would be interested in participating in research, and again, CORD's personnel would contact the participant on behalf of the researcher. The slide is just our SAB, our Scientific Advisory Board, that used the applications. Next slide. Here are some brief metrics on the CORD's registry. We currently have over 1,000 individuals that have come to enrollment, and another 790 that are in screenings, meaning they need to go back in and come to enrollment. We have 160 diseases that are enrolled, represented in the registry. We also have a list of our metrics that are available on our website. Slide, please.
Because I think we're out of time. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
I think unless there's anything else that's you absolutely want to squeeze in now, I think we're going to have to move on and then encourage any of our attendees to contact you with any additional questions you have.
There's just one more slide that I'll finish up in just 20 seconds, if that's all right. The last slide should say in progress, future direction, just to let those out in the audience know that we're interested in working with different groups to customize more registries. We have a lot in queue, but certainly to let us know if you'd be interested. We're interested in working with different languages. We're also wanting to implement data summaries for patients. That's something that's a high priority for us that we're working on at the moment, to provide a data summary after the participant goals, so how they compare to others in the registry. And the CORD's Biobank, I don't know if I have a slide there that's projected for fall of 2013. Next slide. And then finally, our Rare Disease Symposium, which is on Rare Disease Day. And finally, a quote from David Meeker on the importance. I think this is a perfect quote on the importance of registries and how a rare disease community can help accelerate research. And that's it. I'm sorry for going a little bit over.
No problem. Liz, thank you so much for your presentation. And so our next speaker is Vanessa Rangel-Miller of PatientCrossroads, who will present the Patient Connect program.
Hi, thank you, Shara, and thank you to Global Genes for allowing me to present today. I hope everyone can hear me. Thank you very much. So I'd also like to take a quick moment to thank the other presenters who joined us on this presentation and for their willingness to share and describe their programs for the rare disease community. I think this is such an important initiative. Next slide, please. So I'm PatientCrossroads. I'm here to talk today about our newest program called the Connect Registry Program. But I'd like to just spend one slide telling you a bit about where we come from. Crossroads is a company that builds and hosts web-based patient registries, and we currently collect data on our 380 rare and not-so-rare diseases. Our clients are varied. We provide registry programs for advocacy organizations, industry, and government, and NIH specifically. And I've listed a few of our more recent programs on this slide, including the NIH-sponsored National Down Syndrome Registry. PatientCrossroads is the platform for the GRDR program at NCATS. We're also the full partner from the U.S. in the European Union-funded RD Connect infrastructure program, which is designed in support of ERDRC. I've listed a few logos here that represent our numerous advocacy organizations, and we have currently over 50,000 participants enrolled who've answered million questions in aggregate over the years. Now, across all of this, though, really brings us to the experience that allows us to build and offer the Connect program. So get to that. Next slide, please. So the Connect program, I'd like to first tell you what this is. It's our newest opportunity, launched just this past year, and we're very excited for this because we feel that it allows organizations the opportunity to take advantage of the work we've done on our registry platform. Through the program, organizations can become Connect Registry partners and can create their own branded and disease-specific registries using a shared and common platform. So as you can see from the screenshots here, organizations control the branding and messaging. They bring these to their communities and list these on their websites. These are great tools to engage the community and as well to raise the visibility and awareness of their community and identify needs. Next slide, please. So as we go through these slides, you'll showing you screenshots of different portions. I'd like to share first that these programs are very quick to develop. Organizations can send their logo, can decide what information they want on their homepage, and can select from colors in Slidos, and start collecting data in less than a day. They can quickly announce this to their community. Next slide, please. So the Connect program, I'll be showing you a few slides here of the experience of the Connect program. Again, this is web-based, so participants create their own password-protected accounts. Once they've done so, they then have the option to set their data sharing and communication preferences. And they're invited to take one or more health surveys, as you can see from the images. Surveys that we offer are based on common data elements and from survey instruments, and well from questions that originate from our question library. PatientCrossroads has an extensive 700-question library of questions used across our registry programs, and this really primes the Connect participants for hand disease data analysis because everyone is using the same questions. Next slide, please. After collecting the core set of data through the Connect program, organizations who are our registry partners can choose to, or will soon be able to add modules to collect more data for their community. We're soon going to offer the opportunity to select crowdsourced survey modules to collect the greater information as needed for each individual organization. Ways organizations can extend their Connect Registry program is to help recruit sponsors for their particular disease platform. Yes, the sponsors allow organizations to then collect additional relevant records, to curate the data. We provide that as part of the sponsorship package. We would curate the data and assess the quality of the information. The accounts can be given a status and can be satisfied based on the information that's provided. Next, please. But the important piece of Connect is really the data sharing. Again, these are patient opt-in programs, but we seek to openly share the de-identified data, and we find this is so important for advocacy organizations and for participants themselves. So it begins with the participants. Participants immediately after taking a survey can see the charts and graphs of the registry data collected to date. Soon we'll have a professional access portal available for professionals who do not represent a participant in the registry program. The portal would be perfect for academic researchers, advocacy organizations, and industry sponsors to see the same data that participants already see. Next slide, please. Education is an important attribute of the Connect program as well. We encourage participants to check and assign their own communication and privacy settings so that they can choose whether or not they want to receive relevant study notices or updates relevant for their community. We are soon going to allow participants to send their email address to the advocacy sponsor for the purpose of getting the advocacy sponsor's mailing list. Now, in doing so, no other identifiable information will be shared. And should be an industry sponsor, the email nor any other identifiable information will never be shared either. Next slide, please. We're asked specifically to comment about some of the support services affiliated with our programs. And so here I've broken those into three domains. For the infrastructure, the Connect program uses a cloud-based hosting platform. specifically using Amazon Web Services, which is the same platform used in our NIH-sponsored registries. This means that the security processes and controls are exceptionally well vetted. We also utilize Google Translate to offer the survey pages or offer the registry pages in dozens of languages, thereby allowing participants the chance to enroll from anywhere around the globe. A little bit about the data collection and upcoming changes for that. I'd like to point out that the data collected in Connect is designed to be longitudinal, so that every time a participant takes or retakes a survey, we record that with a time and date stamp and archive that for future use. In terms of communications, our registry partners have access to a marketing toolkit, which gives them some basics for advertising and promoting the registry in their community. Participants can have the opportunity to decide whether they want to receive messages or newsletters or recruitment announcements. Next, please. Some of the most pressing questions that were asked about the Connect program are about cost. Let's get to those. First, there's no fee for advocacy organizations to become a Connect registry partner. However, organizations must agree to promote the registry to the community. And for our existing registry partners, we know this can be an extensive amount of effort. It's time and energy to really engage the community in these programs. In terms of custom work or curation, again, that falls under the heading of industry sponsorship. So if a company is sponsoring a registry that does not provide them any proprietary access to the data collected in the registry, nor does that provide them any contact or identifiable information. It does provide them access to the de-identified data, the same de-identified data that the participants and the advocacy organizations are also receiving. Next, please. So I talked a little bit about some of the highlights of our Connect program, and I'd encourage you to check out the website for more. But I know that we've seen great growth and interest in registries for rare disease communities over the last few years. I'd just like to point out two recent recommendations that were issued. The first by Eurodis Nord and the Canadian Organization of Rare Disease, and the second more recently by USERD, and both touch on key attributes and recommendations for registries for the rare disease community. And I won't go into the detail on this slide, but from the check marks you can see, the Connect program actually meets all of the recommendations provided in these two guidances. And we're really happy about that. We feel this reflects the work that we've put into the program over the last 7 years. And the work we put into the platform over the last 7 years. The program just launched this year. And I'd like to touch on my final slide with just a quick example of how we can bring stakeholders together. And I think this is a great example of a rare disease community, lipodystrophy, benefiting from the alliance from joint funding of Bristol Myers Squibb and AstraZeneca to fund registry for the community for 5 years. Again, this is founded on open sharing of the data. We've put together a governing board that's represented by multiple stakeholders. And here, again, PatientCrossroads is the trusted third party, where we protect the participants' privacy and identifiable information, and ensure that all stakeholders have access to the de-identified information. This particular program does have some unique attributes in that we will be collecting and reporting some potential adverse event information, and we will be submitting for Chesapeake IRB for those activities. But it's a great opportunity to showcase how multiple stakeholders in the U.S. and abroad, through the involvement of the European Consortium of Lipodystrophies, can come together in these programs. So what I'll just share on my last slide, next slide please, our contact information. Happy to receive any questions that organizations may have about the program or about rare disease registries in general. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Vanessa, for your presentation. So our next presenter will be Robert Shelton, who will discuss the PEER program, P-E-R program, Genetic Alliance. Robert?
Sarah, assuming you can hear me, you'll interrupt me if you can't. Distinguishing what we've done versus other registries was where I thought we would start. Registries have an orientation of either being patient-centric or condition-centric or study-centric. In our case, we decided that we would try something totally new by making it really patient-centric or participant-centric, and more than just a name only. and you'll see what I mean by that in just a moment. So in our case, the participant is creating each of the rules associated with where their data is going into other registries. So if you can take the next slide, please. So if we look at a typical registry, the core components are a facility for data entry, the health data being held in a de-identified form, a facility for data query and analysis, a privacy and access policy that reflects the goals of the registry owner, to which all participants use consent, and then basically the contact information, the personally identifying information for the individuals is maintained outside the system. Next, please. Okay. What we have done in Peer, architecture actually places this by a implemented front end for data entry, and so on the back end for additional data inquiry, with the data inquiry being checked against whether the privacy permissions permit that data to be accessed by the person seeking access to make the query. Next, please. And the standard privacy policy is replaced by a privacy policy that reflects the goal of each participant controlling access to their information, with the in-between private layer being held to set those preferences. We actually built this on a form of the Peer platform is powering the for all system. Received a number of notices by the MIT review for its giving the patients, the individuals in it, specific control over their access to their information at all times, and recognition by Forbes. Next, please. And in our case, the reason that we have done this, the reason we've set up each person having ability to control their own destiny that may be different from other people in the registry is because of the variability that is shown in how much information each individual wishes to provide. And if you look at the spectrum of this 2009 Institute of Medicine study, if you look at the spectrum of persons at one end in green that are willing to have their data accessed at any time by any researcher for any purpose, versus the other extreme, since you say they don't want research at all to be done on their data, and between the desire for controls that give individuals specific permissions over each access. What we need to do is to satisfy that entire spectrum, recognizing we have persons in the system from each of those different perspectives, give them each their ability to set their own rules. Next, please. So this is how we do it in terms of the privacy settings. Each individual comes in and they're able to set, they're actually required to set privacy settings. Give them multiple categories under which they're able to set those: access rights for advocacy and support groups, medical searchers, and data analysis platforms, so other registries could be there. Then to determine for discovery, which means who can access or locate their information in the first place, including be identified, by the way, contact information, and then who has the rights to use that data. And then we have three settings to allow, deny, or permit access by others, which we call the Ask Me category. Now, highly granular structure requires some assistance, we believe, in terms of educating consumers, and please stop clicking, educating consumers on what their access could be. So we use trusted guides that come from the community to achieve that, and then they're asked for, do you wish to provide access on the Ask Me? They're able to achieve that from the platform of clicking green to consent, red to decline, or yellow to say I need more information. So really setting them to the level of are they willing to access, permit the data to be accessed for a specific researcher for a specific purpose that is disclosed at the time that the disclosure is disclosed to them at the time that disclosure is made. We keep a activity log of all activity, both in changing the preferences as well as in who accesses the information and for what purposes. The interface for answering questions is a gamified survey interface where as each question is asked, they can answer it, and once they answer it, they see how other participants, depending on their privacy preferences, have answered the same questions, and we provide organizational sponsors the opportunity to have received revenue from constituents that to run informative ads. So I already talked about the basic architecture, but as we extend out from the core, and next, we see that we have made ability for custom portals, both for patient entry of the data as well as for participants, researchers on the back end to access and query the information subject to the private preferences of the individuals in the database. Next, please. So what in terms of a platform is that the peer platform goes directly onto the disease organization's website rather than needing, well, it's just a click of a link to someone else's website. It's actually living on the advocacy organization's website itself. And we help the organization to embed their logo, to substitute their trusted members of their communities as guides, and to inherit the privacy policies and terms of use which reflect the patient-centric, the participant-centric nature of the platform. Next, please. So it's able to manage that from a dashboard. They're able to determine whether they want the hosted, select a host that will be the welcome host and the guide, to insert a custom video that they would supply that would describe the process, or they wish to put in a custom image. They're able to curate their questions to over 22,000 questions that are in the database to update and to customize. They're able to set referral codes for outbound communications, and then do statistics of how each of those assets, including badges that they can get out for other websites to draw users to come to the platform, perform. Then from this platform, they're able to make queries and get comma-separated value format for analysis, and to post that data directly on their own website to host a link for that to occur immediately on their website. And time must be up, so I'm going to go since my slides are off the screen.
Well, thank you for your presentation. And so I'd like to now introduce Sally Okins, who will review the Patients Like Me platform.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. This is a wonderful program. It's wonderful to be following such great descriptions. And I'm honored to be on this platform with everyone here today. So the next slide, please. We have been at Patients Like Me building a registry since 2004. Our experience has come from an individual family's experience with a rare disease, ALS specifically, and it has grown from there to understand not only the family and patient's experience of living with a very rare and unusual condition, but also what it takes for everyone in that family as well as the community around them to come together to learn and understand how best to manage that condition. So over the course of the last number of years, as we've added new conditions, we've added new insights because we're gaining that directly from the patients and those close to themselves. So like a traditional clinical registry or research platform, we have been built as a patient-powered research network where patients themselves are coming in, creating profiles, using the tools that we provided for them that are really robust research and clinically relevant tools to provide information about their conditions, around their symptoms, the kinds of treatments they're using, the side effects they may be experiencing. And we're capturing that data and putting that into their profile in such a way that they can graphically watch and and longitudinally see how they're doing at any given point in time using measures that they value most and the ones that they think are going to be most informative for them as they go along their journey. The other part of our site, which I think is the unique aspect of it, is the social connectedness. So not only do we provide the opportunity for people to collect data, to have that included on their own personal profile, but also in a community of people, whether it's in their own individual condition that they want to sort of spend their time, or whether they decide that they would like to engage in other groups that are on the platform itself to really understand not only the common experiences of living with illness, but also the individual experiences of living with a condition. So just to give you an idea of the numbers, we have grown from being a relatively small, unusual environment of patients like me over the last number of years to being a very robust environment where we now have about 220,000 patients who have created profiles, individual profiles on the site, with representing about 2,000 different conditions. We made approximately 50% of those would be considered rare and unusual conditions, although even 75% of them probably are still on the rare list of conditions. So we tracked patients to the platform who have types of conditions that are particularly suited to the kind of information one would want to gather around a rare condition. Today, we are what we call an open registry, environment where we are inviting anybody with any condition to come into the system and to provide them the opportunity to create those unique profiles for themselves, but also to share their data and have that data be viewable by other patients on the platform. Go to the next slide, please. So we are starting to think about developing a new condition with a new registry model, and that might be with a partner or a patient advocacy group that's representing a very rare or unusual condition. We actually go through a rather extensive process of working with them to understand that condition. So when someone's getting ready to use our platform as a place for their own patient advocacy kind of environment to create a registry platform, we work with them to create a Patients Like Me organizational page so that it really looks and reflects the kind of values and important information that would be important to their members. That information becomes of the core of their platform, and it becomes something that we can then start to aggregate data about in order to be able to understand the kinds of experiences patients are having. So from their own website, they would have a link that would come into the Patients Like Me environment. They're inviting their members to become part of the Patients Like Me platform, and in so doing, we're engaging and enabling people to understand the opportunity for not only collecting data on their own condition, but sharing that information and learning from each other and connecting with other people on the site. That type of connectedness has been known to actually have a dose effect. We, in some of our conditions, in epilepsy, for example, have found that patients are reporting that they're actually having, their benefits are increased as a result of participating on the site. And those benefits are in relationship to understanding better about their side effect information, understand how to communicate better with their clinicians around the symptoms they're experiencing, and really being able to better understand overall what it means to live with and manage their condition, because learning that from each other and finding ways of being able to bring that data into the conversation at the point of care. So the longitudinal data that we are able to collect and provide people a visual graphic for on every one of their profile pages becomes really a living record of how they're doing at any given point in time. All our data is in the underlying coding of it. It reflects the information that one would find in the typical kind of environments of an EHR. So all of our data are coded against the standardized terminologies of ICD-10 coding, SNOMED coding. We use common data elements so that we're able to ultimately have the kind of data that will be robustly used in other environments. The next slide, please. So we want to address a number of different questions, and I'm going to go through them quickly here, but we wanted to be sure that people understood that when you come into Patients Like Me, you've come in understanding as part of the user agreement and the login process that you're going to be participating on a website where research is conducted. We then provide you the opportunity to be able to create the profile that you want to create with the data that you want to add. We encourage patients to add the data to the level of comfort that they have, the data that they feel like they would like to share with other people. We're getting ready to do something a bit more expansive in terms of working with a partner, whether it's a pharmaceutical partner in industry or a government partner in looking at something, or a clinical research partner, we then would create that research project with the cohort of patients that would like to participate. So they'd be invited to participate, and part of the invitation would include an informed consent process. We use an external IRB for our review of the projects that we work on when we're getting ready to do something above and beyond our usual data collection. Now, registry participants are able to access their own data. They can see their own data quite visibly, and they also can actually see the data of other patients who have profiles on the site. What we try to do when we're working with a partner is to really understand the kind of data analysis that would be of most interest to you in terms of being able to provide you some feedback. And so that information might be available through analytics, through additional data analysis to look at the tools people are using on the site and that sort of thing. Next slide, please. So we wanted to give us just a quick overview of the kinds of things you can expect when you come into Patients Like Me. Because our platform has already been built and it already exists, we are able to buy quite a few services without any cost. The registry creation, the hosting, the data capture, all the basic analytics one would want to know about who the members are that are coming in aggregate ways, identified information, but being able to give you some information about who's coming in, where they're going, the kinds of tools that they're working with, and that sort of thing. Additional services would be for cost, and those would be things that we would negotiate with you on what you would like and what you would need. What are your members most interested in looking at, and what kind of trial and other kind of information would be of interest to them? If we're doing a separate survey of some sort or a different research project, we would work with you on the IRB submission support for that, or we would work with the industry or other sponsor of that project that we would be working with in a partnership. And data use agreements are also part of that. Next slide, please. We can go to the next slide, actually, because we've already discussed that the cost itself is really just any additional services above and beyond the creation of registry would be something that we would work with specifically with the project. But I'll show you the RARE Open Registry project, which we started in 2012 with Global Genes. And it's an exciting project for us because we were able to provide a platform where people are coming in from the Global Genes site, coming into a welcoming page that suggests that you're here, we're happy to see you, we're happy to have you, and we want to provide you support and access to the kinds of tools that you'll find useful. To date, we've had almost 4,500 views of the page, and about 265 people who have actually now following and have become members of Patients Like Me as a part of the process, are now tracking their data, collecting data, and starting to participate in ways that we will begin to do some interesting research with them on. And then if you go to the next slide, the thing I wanted to suggest is that we have a great partner marketing team. Brad Geisinger would be the person who would be contact for this particular project, and he is going to be able to answer all of the questions you would have in terms of setting up your registry on our platform. But the last thing I'd like to let you know is we also have recently been given a grant through the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to create the Open Research Platform Exchange. And with that, we are working with patients, clinicians, and researchers to really develop patient-reported outcome measures that are actually mattering to patients, where patients are actually part of the process of developing the questions, working through the iterations, and ultimately coming up with a validated tool that we'll be able to use in answering questions that really do matter to patients. So ultimately, in answering questions about rare diseases, those are going to be the ones that we're going to want to be working with you on in order to be able to identify that which will be most useful for making good decisions at the point of care or even in the self-care situations. So with that, I'd like to thank you. I think I've run out of time, and just thank everyone for having us here today. We really appreciate the opportunity to present Patients Like Me.
Thank you, Sally, very much. And I want to thank the representatives of the registry platforms for the summary overviews today. And recognition of the time limitation, we asked each platform provider, as I said earlier, to a more detailed information matrix called a registry comparison tool to be posted on the Global Genes website. There'll also be contact information provided so you can contact each provider directly if you have any further questions. Up today by providing information about some additional resources that you should be aware of, as well as some thoughts about successful implementation of a registry. Platforms that were described by the panelists today each have their own standardized IT framework and features that are designed to be relatively easy to use in building a registry. However, more customized features are required, either in terms of content administration, data pooling, visualization, reporting, or analytic functions, you share more customizable options such as Stack, Red Hat, and systems offered by Remedy Informatics, to name a few. These systems have all been implemented to create registries, including multi-site and disease registries, and they have the advantage of being customizable, especially greatly enhanced features and flexibility. They all enable complete control over the data in the registry, including data ownership, data access. There are costs involved in terms of licenses and system requirements and setup, so this will have to be considered in the decision process. In terms that are available to help guide the planning and organization of a patient registry, I recommend reviewing a publication. It's a very detailed and technical publication, but very valuable, developed for the Agency for Healthcare Quality, Research and Quality, the HRQ, titled Registries Evaluating Patient Outcomes, a User's Guide, which can be accessed through the link on this slide. Now, there's a lot of discussion about the advantages of common data elements and the use of common validated standardized questions and standardized nomenclature. The thought is that a registry should, to the degree possible, use common questions so that data from different registries, both for the same disease or different diseases, can be combined for greater analytical power and can be more directly comparable. And to make it easier for patient groups to create registries without having to start from scratch. There are lists of common elements and libraries of question sets which can be useful, and I've listed some of them on this slide. This is not a complete list, and there are disease-specific question modules that are maintained by various institutes and research organizations. And the number of common data elements and questionnaire modules is growing rapidly, so it would be very valuable to be aware of these. Next slide. Just a few more comments about the process of finding a registry. There is no really one-stop shop or fill-in-the-blanks approach. The choice of an IT platform and the creation of data collection tools and questionnaires have a great influence on the ability of the registry to answer specific research questions and sustainability and what patients continue to participate. And based on companies' experience in designing registries, we found that the common elements and questionnaire libraries are very useful, but they are usually not a complete solution, and there are likely gaps in terms of disease-specific questions. And when you consider that you collect, you should be taking into consideration the goals that you will achieve. That is, want to get out of the registry and with what priority. Also, be conscious of the length questionnaire you're asking your participants to complete, because often participants will simply lose patience and not complete the questionnaire if they find the questions too lengthy, troublesome, or difficult to answer. And one point about natural history studies or other types of longitudinal studies is that your original baseline survey probably collects much more information than is necessary to keep collecting on follow-up surveys. So be able to substantially reduce participant burden if you create a separate, more limited survey to collect only new and changing information over time. However, you'll have to ensure on the back end that these data are appropriately linked to the original baseline data so the data can be analyzed properly. Who attended part 1 of this webcast series, I presented key considerations and steps required in order to plan a robust patient registry. Today we've covered some of these elements, including IRBs, IT platforms, common data elements, and so on. But successful registries are a product of very careful planning, goal setting, and a multidisciplinary team with expertise in key areas. So you should ask yourself some of these questions when you consider designing a registry yourself, and consider the goals, the various registry platform offerings, and make sure that the specific features will match well with the goals. Make sure that you have the expertise represented on your team in order to design the registry content and the protocol. Make sure that you have a plan and appropriate expertise to handle the data, data analysis, data security, data access, and so on. And finally, make sure that your plans consider the longer-term sustainability of the registry so that all the time and effort and cost expended by your group don't go to waste and that you're able to maintain the registry over time. So those are a few sort of final wrap-up thoughts. And with that, we're going to move into having the panel answer some of the questions that you've submitted today. So if you submitted questions about a specific platform, we're going to pass those along and allow them to answer your questions directly because we're running out of time. So my first question I'm going to pose to Chesapeake IRB, to Lori and Dr. G. At what point is an IRB required for a patient group that collects patient-supplied data, and just when the data are used by a research study or need IRB review if we collect like diagnosis, mutations, therapies, and progression.
So you need IRB review prior to the time you collect the data, because we want to see how you're going to collect the data and how you're going to maintain the confidentiality of the data.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to ask the platform providers in 2 sentences or less to discuss the biggest differentiator of your platform. So let's start with, I'm going to go in reverse order. Let's start with Sally.
Oh, thanks. I'd say the biggest differentiator for us is the patient power of our network. This is a peer-to-peer networking environment where patients are actually creating their profiles and connecting with each other and learning from each other and having the opportunity to really impact the way that they're experiencing their illnesses in ways that we don't really have otherwise. So I think that's probably the biggest differentiator, and it's totally patient-centric and really puts them at the heart of it all.
Robert?
I would say it's the ability for the individual to set who is seeing their information and for what purpose at the point that they're actually getting a knowledge of who it is that's asking to see it. So at the point that they're putting data in the registry, it's at the point that the data is coming out of it that they make that decision.
I would say the biggest differentiator is that we provide a tool, a resource for organizations to their own branded registry programs. We don't come between participants and organizations. It's a resource that they can use when they may not have other resources, structures available to them.
Thank you. Liz?
I would say that the CORDS registry is unique in that there's IRB approval for our study. There's no cost for any of the stakeholders to participate, whether it's the participants, the groups, or the researchers to access information, and a unique collaboration with the patient groups to establish a registry that really meets their needs, as well as a platform where individuals can decide how they want their information shared and enter as they wish.
Another question for the platform providers. Would a patient group put a registry plat provider in the position to be the conduit for contacting patients regarding research? Contact information is the, quote, lifeblood or currency of the advocacy group. So, Liz, can you go first?
I'd be happy to. I think that the way that our registry is set up is that we do have IRB approval, so we do have to abide by our protocol and the informed consent form that has been established. So through that protocol, we do have to keep the confidentiality of the participant and contact the participants on behalf of researchers. So it's really how the study has been set up.
Okay.
Sorry, I think I was I would say what we're here is a tool, and as I said, a tool, a solution for organizations who don't have the resources to either start or maintain their programs. And certainly we've heard from our registry partners that the contact information that is valuable. We share the de-identified data back with them, and we're putting together a program to share the contact email address so that participants in the system to be added to an organization's contact list. What we intend is a platform for communities that otherwise would not be able to start registries.
Your question was, why should a participant or why should a disease organization put a form in between? Answer is they shouldn't. I ran a disease organization for 7 years, a very large community of people with very different perspectives of how they wanted their data shared and with whom. And the reason that the platform is set up in the manner that we've set up the peer platform is because each participant should get the right to decide for themselves who they want to share their data with, not have anyone, not us, not Genetic Alliance, not anyone else sitting between them and parties that they wish they, the participants, want their data shared with.
I think the main point I would make here is that when patients come into our platform, they're coming in with the understanding that there are going to be participating in research, but we're clear that any of the use of their data is de-identified and aggregated when shared with anyone. We don't share any personal contact information at all. That anytime we're doing any sign-ons for a new research project, that consent process goes directly through our site, and it's through our private messaging system that we have within the site, and so that the researchers themselves never actually touch directly with the patients, and that relationship is maintained. The patient can opt in or opt out at any time. So what we try to do is give the patients the controls for their participation to the level that they want to participate, and we never share any data that would be personally identifiable or in any way being able to link back to the patient's information that they've shared with us.
I have another question for the platform providers. What if there are multiple support groups for a given disease? Who has access to the contact information? So Liz?
So that's a good question. Sure. So our registry, we can set up a disease-specific registry for different patient groups, but we have the flexibility if different groups wanted to start a disease-specific registry through collaboration. What we can set up are participation agreements with the patient groups to allow them access to information about the registry participants. So if the participants have given consent, we can share that information with the patient groups, but only if the participant provided that consent.
Okay, Vanessa?
For organizations that become our registry sponsors, we allow them to create more than one page, more than one registry for the same disease. Each organization has their own branded entry point, but the data on the back end can then be available to the community, looking across all of those registries at the disease as a whole. So we give the information back in a de-identified manner to the greater community. But for the individual contact information, the only time any elements of contact information will be shared, and this is something that's still in development, would be if a participant elects to share simply their email address with the sponsoring organization, advocacy organization, so they can join the advocacy organization's mailing list. That's an element that would be shared, and it's only available for the specific advocacy organization who sponsored that registry portal.
Okay.
It's not us that makes this decision, it's the participant. The participant wishes to share their information with 5 organizations and 12 researchers and 25 platforms. The participant makes that decision. If we share it with 1 person or 0 persons, entities, the participant makes that decision. It's the participant's choice.
Thank you.
And our situation would be similar to what Vanessa described. So we would allow multiple organizations to have landing pages on the platform, linking from their sites themselves, and the data would be, they could get analytics about their own members that have come through that avenue, that portal. Behind the scenes, we are able to aggregate the data so that you could see across the multiple organizations all the numbers that would be relevant to the common experiences of those patients. But that information, again, would only be seen in aggregate in the process of conducting research on that particular condition. Information going back to the patient advocacy group or the nonprofit group would be specific to the group that that are linking in from their site. Contact information is never shared, so that would be something that it never goes beyond our relationship with the patient themselves. So the information, essentially, they would link into the landing page from the source that they came from, but there would then be aggregated with anybody else with that particular condition. Analytics can be customized, however, so we would give information back to the patient advocacy group or nonprofit specific to them.
Great. Thank you. Well, we're pretty much out of time. I want to first thank all of our panelists and speakers today for a really excellent presentations. To the participants in the webcast today, I just want to remind you that the slides will be posted on the Global Genes website. that the Registry platform comparison tool will also be available with much more detailed information about each one of these platforms. If any specific questions of the panelists today, their contact information is on our slides, and you should feel free to contact them directly. And lastly, let's just go to the last slide. I know that it's an upcoming webcast scheduled on November 21st at 11 a.m. Pacific time called Caregiver Support and Resource Webinar. Just to let you know that that's coming up in November and that you should consider registering for that. I'm sure that will be an excellent presentation as well. So thank you everyone for joining, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.